Hey, good afternoon, good morning, depending upon where you are in the world. We'd like to welcome you to our Fireside Chat today, where we'll be discussing how digital transformation and technology is reshaping the telecommunications industry. So I'm joined by some of my distinguished colleagues from Amdocs. We have Yoav Sneer, who's the Global Head of Digital Partnerships, as well as Nikki Nachimovsky. I hope I didn't murder your last name, Nikki, but
Almost.
almost.
It's
All right.
dying slowly.
All right, there we go. And Nikki is the Head of Digital Services Innovations at Amdocs. So welcome, guys. Pleasure to have you here today. And
Thank you for having us.
for those of you
Thank you.
that don't know me, I'm Eric Hale. I'm Head of Sales Enablement at Creatio, and I'm joined by one of my colleagues, John Binda, who is our Strategic Account Executive Salesperson Extraordinaire.
Thank you, Eric.
All right. So guys, the format for today's call is really just a discussion on a topic. We don't have any deck or any talking points. What we're going to do is just have an open discussion on some of the challenges and opportunities that are being faced in the telecommunications industry today. And for our audience, we'd like you to also participate in this conversation. We invite you to submit questions via chat, and we'll do our best to address those as we move through the discussion. So let's go ahead and get started, guys. What do you say?
Sounds good.
All right. So I'll get the conversation started. I'll throw out a couple of questions here, and I think I'll start with John, because I know how much experience John has with different telecommunication companies and things that we're dealing with here at Creatio. So given the fact that we are in a different time, John, and there's a different set of challenges and opportunities within the telecom industry, what do you see are the biggest challenges or the biggest opportunities that your customers are facing today as you talk to telecom providers?
Well, it's funny, Eric, when I thought about this question, I thought about opportunities and challenges. The first thing that came to mind was this whole COVID thing we're going through right now. It has both opportunities and challenges for some of these telecom companies. Even before that, they were kind of moving away from, it's sort of a trend in the industry is moving away from voice, focusing more on video, text, data, and the demands that brings. Look at TikTok with over 800 million users. Who would have ever thought, and the demands of that, and also video conferencing like this. And our changing workplace. But I think some of the exciting things happening in the industry are all around 5G. That's going to be big changes in the industry, new applications, faster delivery of those applications, and that's going to be some exciting stuff. And that's kind of coming in the horizon. But I think some of the challenges that we face in the industry, and we see this a lot, we're talking about the merger between T-Mobile and Sprint. There's some challenges there, but the competition, especially at the residential space, is just fierce. And I think a lot of times, we lose sight of the fact that a lot of people right now are concerned about regulation around privacy and protection. I did a quick research and found Deloitte talked about 23% of households in the US have been victims of cybercrime. That's a staggering statistic. So from that standpoint, the telecom companies have a real challenge of meeting those requirements for privacy and protection, and that will be ongoing forever. So I think those are some of the challenges and some of the opportunities we see in the industry today.
Yeah, I mean, that's a phenomenal point. And, you bring up, we were talking about that merger, and we see like a lot of consolidation within the telecom industry, whether that's offering additional bundled services going beyond fixed line, mobile, you see that conglomeration of everything where, you have, everything offered as a package. And it seems like, more and more we're seeing even additional options beyond that as well. I can't tell you how many different streaming services I belong to now, but my entertainment bill seems to be going up and up as we continue through this lockdown. So great points.
Right. By the way, Eric, to your point, we see continued merger and acquisition for sure, and the trend is, or the next landscape of competition is the media and content. So if you look at acquisitions, you see the traditional telcos, if you will, the quad play, the triple play, not only merging like T-Mobile and Sprint, which is mostly mobile to mobile, some business, you see acquisition in the media space, and actually AT&T and others acquiring studios. Comcast, for example, had studios all the time, right? They had Universal. So AT&T acquired content. Everyone are going to content, not everyone, but a lot of our customers are going to content. That's kind of the next realm. So because they're trying to fight with the over the tops of media, whether it's Disney or Hulu or Netflix, right? So that's another trend we're seeing. So that's one way for them to differentiate themselves or to bundle more and become more than just an infrastructure. Although speaking of COVID that John mentioned, telcos always used to be called the dumb pipe. That was the term 5 years ago, right? The fear was that it would become a dumb pipe, which in a way they have. And then they tried to make it a smart pipe. And now actually it's becoming a very critical pipe. So even if theoretically there will be only a pipe of voice and data, we've seen now that this pipe is so important in our day-to-day. None of us could have functioned in the past 6 months without a solid internet connection, without our mobile, even if we're within some Wi-Fi coverage, which is being consumed by other in our household. In my case, my kids streaming endlessly. So, and that's an issue, a challenge for the telco providers, but also a great opportunity to provide more on 5G, more fiber optics, more security, like John mentioned. So better security on the pipe, and so on and so forth. And the last point is, you talked about how many services you're subscribed to. So the cord cutting is another thing we're seeing on the one hand. So people are disconnected from trying to unbundle the package. Even contracts, by the way, on mobile services are a thing of the past. So you have what we call an occasional loyalty. So again, that's an opportunity and a challenge for telco providers.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to add, yeah, thanks. I would like to add that, what we've discussed right now is mainly, at least from what I see, is more towards the big telcos, the ones who can offer themselves to buy a media company or, enter a new domain. In most of the world, it's less, I won't say relevant, but it's we see that in lesser times. What we do see is most of the telcos today provide, I would say, mainly the same services between one another. And I would say that there are two ways to differentiate between the others. One is pricing, okay? Lower your price, be less pricier than others, people will come. It's good if you have huge pockets, okay, and you can last that long. It won't last for a very long time.
By the way, people have demonstrated that they could. They went with the Un-carrier and discounted and discounted. Everyone said it's just a matter of time until they crash. And surprisingly, not only they didn't crash, we know what happened. So
yeah,
that's true. But I don't see a lot of telcos doing that today.
That's correct. You're right. In other places in the world. And sorry, I cut you off. So
no, it's okay. So the other way around, and I think that this is the main thing that we see today in telcos, is the customer experience. Okay, differentiate yourself by giving a better customer experience. Make them as loyal as they can. Take out the pricing metrics out of the equation and try to give them the best experience. And experience today is all around. It's not just what we had a few years ago of giving them, high-speed internet, high-speed bandwidth, good quality of calls. It's more about the personalization. It's more about understanding what the customer really needs and wants. And I think, at least from my view, the most important thing is your reaction time. Okay, if your customer is reaching you, you need to understand what he wants. You need to know what you can give him, what should make the difference, and how fast you can give him that. And that's the differentiator today.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And actually, I'd like to continue down that that path and just a little bit on customer satisfaction, because we know within telecom that's a challenge, right? We know that they're challenged with that. But I would like to touch on something that both John and Yoav had talked about. So within the global pandemic that we're dealing with today, we see that it's kind of reshaping a lot of the way any business, not just telecom, but any business has to engage with their customers, right? So digital transformation is not necessarily a nice to have, but a necessity at this point. And telecom, in particular, has, I don't want to say benefited from this, but has become more and more a large part of that digital transformation effort, right? We need reliable, high-speed internet. We need mobile capabilities, additional mobile capabilities, and down to just what we were talking about, additional home entertainment options, right? It's more of a demand at this point. So Yoav, I'd like to ask your opinion on given the pandemic and the way that it's kind of shaping, where do you see that leading the telecom industry over the next 2 to 3 years? What's going to change? What are those emerging technologies that are going to come out of this, and how is that going to affect the telecom providers going forward?
Well, that's a very big question. I think we touched on some points earlier, like 5G and security, and telcos being a critical infrastructure. So that plays a part of that. Also, telco used to be in many countries a very regulated industry, and now being transformed into a critical infrastructure like utilities, like electricity, right? In some places, even becoming more regulated. But on the other hand, some countries are trying to make internet, some countries, some companies like Google Fiber, for example, in the States, are giving away free basic fiber internet to people with low income to provide necessary infrastructure. In other places in the world, as developed countries, there are companies that are experimenting with Wi-Fi over air balloons and satellite and other things, again, to serve the underserved. So that's one aspect of it. In terms of new normal and new services, it's a combination of the trends we talked about and new things. For example, security we talked about. Mm-hmm. So both as a residential customer, as a household, 23rd, I think John said is the number of household that got affected only recently. It will only get worse. Small, medium businesses are actually the most vulnerable, because the larger the enterprise can have their CISO and they have their security infrastructure and department, they can invest. Households usually are not that attractive to hackers, but the small, medium businesses are very, very vulnerable, and they can't afford their IT, and they have a lot to lose. So security is a huge opportunity for both residential and business, especially small, medium businesses. Obviously, everything remote, so e-health was in place and for years. For example, Telos in Canada and Verizon in the US made acquisitions in this domain in the past few years, but the pandemic have accelerated it and forced us, like digital transformation. Everyone now prefer, if they cannot go to the doctor's office or to the hospital, but they need something, they want to do it over here. So e-health is a huge opportunity. Many telcos are playing there, many are trying to. The remote connection world in general, the Zooms of the world, right? We've seen the acquisition of BlueJeans recently, and there are talks, which I mentioned, I think in our previous webinar, about who is going to buy Zoom. And there are a few contenders that are being rumored, may or may not happen. But again, there's enough room there to go around, and maybe it's a good thing that not everyone will be on Zoom. It's not a great service. So that's another one. We see, obviously, in the home services like connected home, smart home. That's another area where telcos can play. That's actually an area where we, Amdocs, have launched recently some new offering to the market to try and help our customers to play in that domain. Another big area, we mentioned content, but content can be media, can be gaming. Gaming esport is also huge, and some of our customers are playing there. And we saw with, by the way, it's not only esports. Esport was always there. It was done in arenas. It moved from the streaming to the main arenas. There are big arenas that were built in different places around the world to watch e-gaming. Now they're all shut down. It's back to streaming. And we see the traditional sports, the NFL. I watched the Chiefs games this weekend.
Right.
You see the huge stadium with, I think I have 100,000 seats. There are patches of people socially distanced, and most of the people are watching it remotely. So that's another opportunity for both for the big ones and also for small ones. If you watch my son's football team in high school, we used to watch the games last season. We can't watch it now. We have some partners, and there are many other companies around the world that are focusing on those small youth leagues, whether it's a junior baseball or college football or whatever it may be. How do you build the infrastructure for those venues to stream it for even the community? Mm-hmm. And there are much more, but I'll stop here because I guess I'm assuming you probably also have some idea of where it can go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have definitely ideas where it can go. I think one thing that I'm curious about in getting your guys' feedback on is that, now that we have this demand, I think that it poses, also a challenge for telecommunication companies, right? So if we think about the need for bandwidth, the need for spectrum, like as these these services become more and more in demand by consumers, telecom companies, I feel, are going to struggle, whether that's, again, gaining more spectrum, laying more fiber, fat pipe, everything that we need to support these types of technologies is really going to be a challenge for some telecom providers. What are you guys seeing within your interactions with your customers?
So I think that there are a lot of challenges, and there are actually conflicts between the demand that is growing on one hand, but on the other hand, we have many different things that we need to take care of because now regulation came into place. Okay, all over Europe, for instance, every SIM card that is being purchased, it requires to do identity verification as part of the regulation. Okay, we see a lot of other things that until now needed to be in face-to-face interactions, and we don't have those today. Again, part of the new normal. Think about all the retail stores that the telcos have. That some of them are not open anymore. We don't know when will they be open, so they need to adjust to that. So there are a lot of challenges coming and going. On one hand, the investment in new infrastructure, in 5G and everything, costs huge amounts of money. On the other hand, there are players such as Google and Facebook that you have mentioned that are giving out free Wi-Fi, expanding all over the world. So there is a button here, okay, and that's, I would say, difficult a decision of how much to invest against what will you gain from this is a bit challenging for the telcos today. I think that what we will see and what they need, or the telecommunication domain as a whole need to look at, is mainly how we can react and make almost everything digital as much as it can. Okay, all the digital transformation is being pushed way further and much faster now. He needs to be able to do it with as less effort as possible. So most of the efforts will go into the infrastructure because it's a big investment from their side.
If you look at a telco, by the way, even before the pandemic, even before 5G, network infrastructure has always been their #1 spend, always, and it always will be. That's their business. They sell. We talked about the pipe or the network. This is their core infrastructure. This is what they are eventually. If you strip everything down, they provide the connection. So obviously the network is a huge investment, always will be, always have been. If you look at some numbers, some statistics, we've seen in EMEA, for example, recently, between 40 to 60% increase in fixed line, and surprisingly 25 to 55% increase in mobile use. Although you can claim that, you know, we are always at the home and we're using Wi-Fi, but apparently people are making much more use in mobile. If you look at less connected areas like India and Africa, where maybe fiber or network connection, cable connection is less common. So there we see 30 to 40% increase in mobile, including data. So, you know, and by the way, we remember earlier this year, also in EMEA, I believe, and maybe in some other places, the government in some places asked the main streaming provider like Netflix and YouTube to reduce or limit the quality. So the infrastructure, the backbone within those countries or within the region will not crumble because the demand was so high. And so that's a challenge, right? But going back to Mikin's point, the key will be, obviously they invest all the time. And now there's more demand. They will need to find ways to have it pay back, because the ROI for 5G was advanced use cases, low latency for gaming, for smart cars, driverless cars, drones for delivering Walmart groceries, and so on and so forth. That's great. That's maybe the midterm future, but they need to find a way to fund those things in a downturn economy this year.
Guys, I have to be, you know, the party pooper. I'm sorry, maybe it's only me, but I think that nobody actually knows yet what to do with 5G. It's like IoT a bit, okay? It's there are many different, you know, every now and then there comes this big blockchain and IoT and now 5G, and amazing technology, really advanced, and everything is great, but it's still, we still don't know how to utilize it really. And you have said connected cars, totally agree, and they will come with 5G, but when? Because the cars are not there yet. So it's all like we're a bit in the future, and I think that there is the dilemma where to start investing in that. And on one hand, there are already telcos that are doing that because they have to be the first. But then it's like, what will the others do? They would need also to go there and invest as well, because they don't want to stay behind. But on the other hand, nobody knows when will they see back that money that they invested.
Yeah, and I think that I even look at it from a different aspect, and this will lead us into our next discussion, guys. So, you know, we find that, you know, to your point, people have been investing, telcos have been investing in the infrastructure, investing in, you know, how to improve service and offer additional services, you know, and we look at those new applications that are going to be taking advantage of that high bandwidth, high speed connectivity, but it's also a necessity to invest in the infrastructure to keep your customers happy as well, right? Like, we as consumers have high expectations. You know, one thing goes wrong, you know, certain things, you know, if my shirt doesn't fit quite well, or my steak doesn't come out cooked quite the way I like it, we may live with that. But when it comes to our bandwidth, right, and our entertainment, my cable goes down, my Wi-Fi drops, that's it. I mean, that will drive consumers insane, right? And that's why, you know, consistently we see telcos customer satisfaction ratings tend to be at a low point compared to other industries, right? Because everybody's so critical of the services that are being provided by your telco companies. You know, one wrong thing happens, and you know, we're quick to, you know, give them a poor satisfaction rating. So I guess, you know, from from that perspective, and I'll open it up to the floor, but I'll ask John because he's been kind of quiet here. So,
It's been a great conversation, though.
so in your experience, John, how does consumer expectations within or consumer expectations and their preferences, how do telecom companies one, either invest in technology or invest in different ways of supporting their customers to ensure that they're not migrating to other providers. We talked about that at the beginning of the call. Competition is just growing. It's coming from so many different areas. So it's really something that I feel they have to focus on. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree 100%. I think, we've been all over the place in the conversation today, but there also is a fine line between commercial and residential business. On the commercial side, it's all about quality and reliability. We talked about security and everything else. They're not as concerned with price information. And then you go to the residential area, it's all about the brand. What's the biggest company I can work with at a decent price? And price is important because obviously we talked about T-Mobile offering this great, reduced price, and look what happened. So I think, but overall, we keep coming back to the customer service experience, right? So whether you're a commercial or residential, if you're getting the right type of service from your provider, you will likely stick with them. I have a story. I was sitting up, my mother moved into an assisted living. I won't name the vendor, but she moved into an assisted living. They came in and set everything up. We walked in, moved her in. I started turning everything on. Everything was working fine. Then I had to call customer support. And as I was talking to customer support, I was on my cell phone and they said, we have to send you a text or a code, but we can't send it to your cell phone. We have to send it to a second cell phone. My wife had just walked outside the unit and I had to call her back in, give me your phone. Okay, here's the number. You send a text to that number. We got that settled. And then they said, okay, one more step. We need to send you an email or another message, but to a different computer. Do you have a different computer? I'm like, my mother has one computer. Luckily I had a laptop with me, but I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is not good customer service. So again, keeping in mind whether it's commercial or residential, if you're not getting that level of service and you're not feeling comfortable, you can switch. I mean, residential, you can keep your phone number, you can switch providers, no one's ever going to know. And it just takes one bad experience. And again, at the commercial side, it's a lot more tied to dollars and revenue. If you have an outage or you're out, that's big problem. But like Eric said, the minute you lose your connectivity or the minute you have a problem, you'll switch or you'll turn it off and move on. And it's again a whole thing around. And we talked a little bit about the billing experience too with some of these customers. If you have a vendor that's selling you a bill, you can't make heads or tails of it. It's 20 pages long and you don't understand what's going on. That's a problem as well. So I think from the residential side, it's all about the customer service experience. And again, at the commercial side, it's quality and reliability. It's just it's a different kind of a need and preferences at those two different levels.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Mickey, I know you have some thoughts on this.
Oh, I have, totally I have, yeah.
Got a solution.
And a solution. There you go.
Customer experience by far today is I would say it's not the easiest way. Okay, it's not easy to get a good customer experience or to create a good customer experience, but investment wise, it's much easier than now going into a full infrastructure replacement or anything like that. I think that customer experience starts, just as John said, on your onboarding process and goes all the way. It's a full life cycle. You cannot stop giving that. And even if I'm a customer, if I'll go now to the telco's website and go inside and I would see something that I like, and they have an amazing e-commerce website and everything is great, clicking, going, done, getting the cart, clicking, I agree, and then it tells me, well, you have to go to the store or to the post office just to sign up for something or to give a document or whatever is needed, or someone will call you in the next year or so. This is not a good customer experience, okay? This is where you lose the customer. And this is exactly what today I think the main way of moving to the next step and making this a much more streamlined experience. So many different tools that you can use today, from Customer 360 to actually understand everything that is going on with the customer, to understand what is there. from chatbots that today got to a very, very high level of communication, of conversation, actually. You can today communicate and collaborate with a chatbot, and it's not just a chatbot, it can be even a voice bot. Today, there are solutions that can call you, and you won't even know, unless they will tell you, hi, I'm a virtual agent. By no way you will know that, you know, a robot is talking to you. And that can give a huge benefit both to the service provider, but as well to the customer. So it's a two-way of engagement. And think about all, you know, taking it to the next step. You got this, for instance, chatbot, you got this voice bot, anything like that. It will reduce the operations cost as well, because you don't need that huge amount of agents anymore to just pick up a phone and then ask you those, I'm sorry to say, stupid questions like your last name, your last 4 digits of the credit card, who is your mother, where were you born, what's the name of your cat? I don't know. I don't have a cat.
All of which, by the way, you entered in the IVR 5 minutes ago,
Exactly.
and then you waited 15 minutes on the line.
And it goes, yeah, and I'm sorry to say, but those stupid ways of trying to help you with any technical reason, like go and see if there is a light. I was actually in that. Go and see if there is a light in the staircase. Okay, great. There is a light. Now what?
No, first restart, then unplug for 5 minutes.
Retext at 10
I
seconds.
already did. No, do it again.
Let's wait 30 seconds every time. So that doesn't work. Okay, today everybody is expecting something a bit better than that. And if we can give everything contextual, for instance, think about that you have a problem with your router and you are a VIP customer and you are now actually communicating not from the IVR and calling, but opening up your WhatsApp or your SMS and just sending a text message. The bot will recognize that you are a VIP customer. He will ask you if there is a technical issue. He will know which device you already have, which router you have. He will try to fix it with self-diagnostics and with some additional ways of understanding the problem and communicating with many different systems inside the telco. And if only then nothing will help and you still have the problem, he will route you not just to an agent that again will start asking you the same questions over and over again, but to the relevant agent with the relevant context. And then it's a much better customer experience. And this is what we're trying to do today.
Yeah. You have a thought on that? I saw a light go off above your head.
First of all, I have a comment about the stake that we're willing to compromise on. So I'm originally from Israel, but now I'm living in barbecue heaven, Kansas City. So we don't compromise on our stakes. So that's
okay, all right.
I want to put out there. Just saying. But seriously, I think one more thing that connects to what Mickey said, that's the light bulb that went on, is the personalization. We expect everything to be digital first and automated and in context, and we want it to be in context for me, because when I connect to Amazon, I get things that are relevant for me. When I open Netflix on my profile, I get usually things that are relevant for me. So we're talking about what we call a segment of one. So marketing is segmented, but now we want a market of one. We want the offers, we want the context of the service, we want the telco to know us, and they know us, by the way, better than most. You know, everyone are talking about Google and Facebook knowing us and spying on us. Come on, the telco has so much information about us for the past 20 years. They just haven't done a lot with it. So maybe it's time, since the customer wants that and used to that, provide that context, that market of one, whether it's on new sales, whether it's on service. So that's also something that actually is only an opportunity, because they have the information, they have the infrastructure, and the customer expect that. So it's becoming almost table stakes.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And I think we touched on a lot of key areas here, right? So if we look at it from, a technology perspective, right, and how we go about, leading the technology charge when it comes to telecom companies, if we look at, the models of, how do we provide better service? How do we have cost controls in place, right? Because that's the other thing. We have to think about how much is it going to cost to serve our customers. People are looking to do more with less, but keep that level of service the same. And to your point, Yoav, when we start to think about that single view of the customer, that that target audience of one, all of that data could be housed in several different systems, right? Especially with acquisitions. You may have a mobile aspect, a cable aspect. All of that might have been through acquisition, different systems, different records of customer behaviors, customer data. What do you guys think is the most technology to bring, the most important technology to kind of bring that all together and create that seamless experience for customers? Like, how do you see tying all of that together? I know when I talk to telecom companies, that's their biggest challenge, right? There's so many different silos that they have. Is, how do we bring all of that together so that way we can create that better customer experience? A good example of that might be is if I call in for my cell phone, I may have to talk to one representative, but if I had a technical problem with my cable modem, they might have to transfer me to somebody else, and I have to start that whole process over again of who am I? What is the problem that I'm having? So how do you see all of that being? Yeah, exactly. What do you see as the critical technology bringing all of that together? I know that, from an Amdocs perspective, you guys have a lot of different solutions that kind of, give that that single view. And I know, John and us at Creatio have our ideas on that. But what do you see from a technology perspective?
You ever want to start?
Yeah, anybody.
First of all, it's a huge problem with many layers. Start from the fact that let me take a step back. If you look, one of the main differentiators or the main differences between the new age companies, the startups, the Ubers, the Amazons, to the older technology telcos is how they grew up. Everyone that is building something new today is in a much better position than someone who started their business even 5 years ago or 10 years ago, not to mention 20, 30, 50. Okay, whether it's telco or any other organization that is not born as what we call a digital native organization that has the one system on relatively latest technology and the organizational culture, both IT and business culture, to match it, is a disadvantage. Because and it's such a complex problem that spans from infrastructure and IT to organizational culture and processes and everything in between. But so that's something that we need to consider. But if you look at specifically the technology aspect of it, so disparate databases and data islands are a big problem. Also systems. If you look even if you look at systems that have not been acquired, we have customers that have, even if they're only on Amdocs, they may have 2 or even 3 different Amdocs platforms, not products, set of platforms that serve different line of businesses or different regions. So that's a big problem. And obviously the easiest, but not feasible solution is to modernize everything to the new stack. That was the approach 5, 10 years ago. And those are huge projects. No one has the time nor the money to do it today. So those big transformation to migrate and modernize and go to digital, one platform, single source of truth, those rarely happen today. And if they do, they go in small chunks and just take care of the critical parts. So one way we're trying to handle it, and we have different solutions that use the same approach is to put a unification layer or a facade on top of it. So build some kind of a layer that will, whether it's an orchestration layer on top of many backend systems, or I don't know, an overarching data layer on top of 100 data islands. So try to build something on top that will act toward the upper part, toward the users of the data, toward the call centers, the digital system in the front, that will enable it to look like one unified system. And I can do on my self-service app a request that has to do with voice or data, although those are actually different BSS systems that may or may not be Amdocs, or may even be different technologies. So that's one thing we're doing, and there are many more, but that's
Yeah.
a huge problem.
I think with legacy systems, they're built for, business and to meet business problems. Nowadays, if you're going to be implementing a new technology, it's customer focused. What is this going to look like for the customer? It's not so much, can we handle our billing better? Can we do things internally better? It's how is this going to impact our customer? What's the customer experience going to be? And that's kind of the focus for new projects that are happening now, as opposed to maybe 5 or 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, definitely.
I would say that we need to look at it on a few aspects. One is the technology itself, or the enablers, just as Yoav said. So middlewares that know how to communicate between the systems, standardizing everything into, as an example, REST API, so everything will be able to talk together and not just old legacy protocols that cannot even interact with each other. Siloing or breaking down those monolithic systems as much as you can. Again, you're not going to throw away what you have. Leave it as is, but create microservices or micro apps on top of those databases that you already have, in order to get those new interactions, digitalize everything. So this is one aspect. The other one, just as John said, customer-centric. What would the customer need? So you have the data already, okay? Most of the telcos are not 5 years old, okay? They're already been up and running for years and years. They have huge amount of data. First of all, many of them don't know how to utilize everything yet, okay? This is one thing. So there are a lot of things that you can do with the data and make a much more personalized experience and much more faster response time, everything around this. Second thing is, leave the data there, take new technologies, okay, which are out there. For instance, Creatio is a very, very good example for that. And you can bind them, or you can integrate them into those systems and data that are already up and running in the telco, and just create a new experience, which is customer-centric, okay? Give the ability for an agent, if we're thinking about an agent or a sales representative, to see all the relevant information in one place. So the customer won't need to go over and over an additional line of either questions, or even, if we're thinking about sales, having sending him something that he doesn't need or even can't get, because there is no serviceability in that area of that specific service. So this is very important, how you can give the relevant data through modern technologies to the customer. This is one thing. And second, if we're thinking about the inbound way, so give as much as you can, again, utilizing the same technologies or building another layer on top of them in order to give a better self-service experience. Omni-channel communication, which is today, we see it all over the place, especially, by the way, if we're going back to the COVID-19 era, the new normal, it's crazy what is going on. This is the first time, by the way, if we're talking about statistics, first time that the non-voice channels actually exceeded the voice channel in many, many places. The estimates were that only in 2 to 5 years from now this will happen. Few months of lockdown and boom, everybody's just non-voicing. So it's crazy. You have to give that, and you have to be able not only to get that info, get that communication from your customer, but actually be able to react in the relevant context right away from there. So we're getting back again to the same thing: data on one hand, customer centric, and then the technology in the middle that can communicate between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the term that there are a couple of terms I like in this conversation, right? Is that customer-centric approach to all of our decision making, right? We're putting the customer at the center of everything. But also from an operational standpoint, I like the term that you utilize, for that middle layer, that enabler, right? Because as we know, we have our existing technology that has to be kind of brought together into that single interface. But we know that it seems like every minute there's a new application or a new service or a new way of interacting with customers that will come into play, and how easily can we plug that into our ecosystem, right? So that's really where that enablement layer, as you indicate, right, that's going to normalize all of that data into a single application and share it back and forth, is really important. And I see that throughout all of the customer interactions that I have. If we look at telecom, it's WhatsApp that maybe people want to communicate on today, but what's the new application that's going to come out 6 months from now that's going to be the the latest flavor. So I like those two phrases: customer centric and enabling. I like that. Another thing that I wanted to discuss from a technology perspective is, and it's a sensitive subject. We talk about operations and cost of operations, and we look at telecommunication companies or providers looking for ways to, again, keep that service level the same without, adding additional costs. And at least a lot of the conversations that I have surround, how can we use lower cost resources to provide the same level of service. So that might be an example of, we have onshore resources here in the US that, cost X, but, we may have a contact center, somewhere in, lower cost compensation model in other areas. But, the skill set might be different. So I find that a lot of organizations are looking for ways to, normalize that level of service across, multiple different skill sets, right? How do we take, and we also know that within telecom, in particularly the support area, there's a lot of turnover. So we see a lot of employee churn. So how do we enable those employees to provide that level of customer experience no matter where it's coming from? So, maybe we can shift some of those more expensive resources, and have it covered in another area. So John, I know that at Creatio we have many tools to address that, but how do you see technology being able to turn a brand new employee into the best employee within a matter of days, as opposed to a long 6-month training cycle? How do you see normalizing that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it does kind of come back to technology. When we talk about customer service or customer engagement, you have to engage the customer how they want to be engaged, right? So when we talk about omni-channel, and you should have this in the system. It should say this customer prefers text, SMS, whatever, or they prefer to use the portal, and that's their go-to method. Maybe they will call you sometimes, but their preference is portal. So to have this multi-channel environment, to be able to do voice, text, portal, chatbots, all the above, and then to find out what the customer preference is, and then going back to the comment that Mika made earlier, just take all that data that you have in all these different silos and somehow bring it together so that that data can be used to provide that higher level of service, so that when you call someone, the person you talk to or the person you're online with has access to all that information. They don't have to transfer you. They don't have to put you on hold. They don't have to, make you wait a long time. The whole goal is to find the solution as fast as possible. So you need to be quick, but you also need to be personalized with your customer service. And I think that's what technology enables you to do, is to have the answer at your fingertips and to provide that higher level of service in any fashion that the customer wants to do it, any kind of communication mode they want to interact with you, do that one, but still have the same information to serve the customer in the fastest way possible. I mean, how many of us have been on hold with our telco providers? You know, your wife comes in, what are you doing? I'm on hold for 30 minutes. You know, like, that's not fast and that's not personalized. That's really, you know, I think that's the knock on a lot of telcos is their customer service. And there's lots of gains that can be made. But for the bigger companies, like we talked about, they have legacy systems containing all this data that somehow has to be brought together. And that's a big challenge. And it can't happen overnight. It has to be phased in kind of iterations approach. But the focus, the end goal is always going to be the customer. So how do we improve that customer experience with quick and personalized customer service? And that's definitely a goal for all the telcos. It's easier, as you have mentioned, for companies that just started, but companies that have been around for 20, 30, 50 years, it's a challenge, but I think the technology is there. They just can't flip a switch and make it happen. It's going to have to happen in a kind of a phased approach.
And it's a combination of technologies, by the way. There are different technologies and different solutions that can enable that. You know, Creatio for sure is one of it. There are other technologies around enablement that you talked about, John. So funny enough, Mickey and I had a discussion just yesterday about call it the return of knowledge management, right? Or the evolution of knowledge management, that, you know, everyone has a knowledge management system, right? Not only telcos, usually even more than one. So they need an overarching system about the knowledge management. But now that, you know, call centers, entire call centers are working from home, and they cannot put you on hold and turn around to the guy next door, to the guy next on the next cube, or to call the supervisor over from the next row. Hey, I need help here. What do I do? It doesn't exist anymore. So knowledge management is key. And by the way, anyone who has been in a call center ever, you know, knows it's amazing when you watch calls and how the dynamic works in a call center. It's just amazing. It looks like, I know, it's a 70s experience, not 2020. So knowledge management is one. Training on the fly or enablement, not only getting the right information for the user at the right time, but helping them to navigate the system. Some of the systems are not an Amazon digital native system, right? Even the latest and greatest of the Amdocs call centers apps, which are highly tuned and for you and designed for a very easy interaction. You take the system, implement it for a telco that has been in place that has been working for years and have very complex, let's say, small medium business ordering flow that can span 50 or 100 steps with different flows and subsystems just to navigate that for a new CSR. It's a nightmare. So you need a system like a GPS, a technology GPS, to guide them through that interaction, not only the knowledge to answer the question, but what do I click next? Or what do I do? Or what do I ask? Or how do I handle that error message that came up? So enabling, so knowledge, enabling everything at the fingertips. And so that's definitely technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could agree more, and that's you know, something that, you know, we see particularly in telecom, you know, being highly important, right? Because again, there's different skill sets. There's a lot of turnover. You have time to orient and time to competency when you're hiring new employees. How do you do that? Well, the easiest way to do that is just as you indicated, right? You enable them, or I like to use the word empower them with the tools that they need to manage that customer interaction. And you know, we also start to see technologies like AI, machine learning, being able to guide them through that, right? Like, so, you know, hey, based on this customer's request, you know, not only do you have to go search a knowledge base, but here's a knowledge article that, you know, others have utilized in this particular question. You know, here's the next action that you'll need to take within this troubleshooting process, right? And script it for that agent so that they don't even have to think about what that process is, right? It's just going to guide them through that system. So I couldn't agree more with, you know, the ability to enable or empower these employees to give the best customer experience. And oddly enough, there's all kinds of studies out there, but when employees are, there are new customers, right? We have to take care of our employees as well, and then they'll take care of us. And when employees are empowered with the tools necessary to manage those interactions, they feel better about their job, which is going to translate, again, customer-centric, to a better customer experience.
Well, it's kind of funny you mentioned processes, Eric, and I think that's kind of a thing that people talk about today, doing more with less, whatever that mantra is. Workflows and processes can help that. But the important thing is you can't write them in stone, right? You have to be able to go in and modify them. Let's say the COVID thing hadn't happened yet. You build all these processes and all of a sudden the COVID thing hits. You got to go back and re-examine all those workflows to make sure they're appropriate, they're customer focused, and they're adjusting to the new environment. So not only do you have to build processes, but you have to be able to modify them very quickly and easily, and that's what new technology can help you do.
I would add a different thing. What are we aiming for is to automate everything that we can. It's very important today. Second thing is with, as you said, with AI and machine learning, we're already getting to a proactive care state where the AI would just take over and suggest things to do. But the vision that we see is actually even going further. The AI will do it by itself, together with the automation. So you won't even need the agent to get anything done. It will be done. So you're taking the burden out of him. The agent will just focus on giving that service better or to communicating better. But I think that we also forgot something else. We're talking about how we can empower new agents and everything. There is an additional thing that we can do in order to make everything go faster. And this is actually in the technology aspect. How would we deliver everything fast? There are many things. First of all, infrastructure-wise, let's go to the cloud. Today, it's much faster, okay? Instead of going now and installing a lot of services, go and do just, upload a few instances in the cloud, and that's it. Second thing, which is very, very important, is low-code. Low-code development is becoming now a real standard, okay? Instead of having multiple different developers, every one of them developing a code, just automate a lot of this, just use many different tools. By the way, Creatio, we're utilizing that as well, and do as much as you can in a faster way. And last thing, which is very important today, is of course DevOps and microservices, again, because it can make the entire life cycle way, way, way faster. Instead of going now into a development mode and then testing mode and finding out that there is something not working and going back all over again, you can just upload a full environment that will do the testing automation in few clicks, and that's it. You have everything just dropped and working.
Mm-hmm.
Two more things, by the way. We talked about digitally native companies. There are also digitally native generations or employees. So we talked about the turnover and how technology can enable and guide the employees. If you look at the current generation that is now getting into the workforce or starting in the lower ranks of the workforce, whether it's millennials or Gen Y, Gen Z soon to be, they were born into the digital age. They expect that if they don't know anything else, they don't want to read the manual, they don't want to sit through training, they will churn before they even hit the floor. So that's a digital experience for the employees is also table stakes. So to your point, John, about not only the customer experience to be digital, also the employee experience. So that's, and again, as Mickey said, technology can enable that, and low code can be a part of it for sure, because if they know, and they are savvy, right? They know how to go into, they grew up playing Roblox and Minecraft, and they know to build the gadget, right? So if you give them a low-code environment, and they can go into the editor and change the process they are using to make it fit how they want to work, and by that and then share it in a community with their peers and have the organization run faster. That's another way the technology can enable faster growth and digital experience. So that's one. Another way the technology can enable a leaner business, and the pandemic also kind of accelerated, is the distribution of the workforce, right? So we talked earlier about outsourcing of call centers in an effort to reduce costs, but it comes at a certain cost of maybe the infrastructure is not there, maybe there's delay, maybe there are culture barriers. So another thing that we see today is working from home, right? If the entire call center is working from home remotely, so why do we even need a call center? If we make the call center infrastructure virtual, and if we allow people to work anywhere, we can take what was used to call a few years ago rural outsourcing, if you will, right? Or nearshore or rural nearshore outsourcing, where you hire employees that live not in the big cities, not in the coast. If you take the States, for example, or it applies to many other areas in the world, places where the cost of living and cost of hiring is much lower, but the skill set are there, people that are educated and have the skills and have the language, and the infrastructure is even there. We talked about Google Fiber, given the infrastructure, for example, either for free or for low cost. So if you take that and you hire employees that are able, have the technology, give them the right tool, and by the way, talking about churn, since if you give them the opportunity, they will be much more loyal to you, because not necessarily in their small town in the middle of nowhere, I don't know, Texas, Kansas, whatever it may be, maybe there are also not so many opportunities like in the capital of call centers somewhere in the States or in India or in Brazil, where they move from one place to another, or Seattle, where the technology is keen and everyone, or the Silicon Valley, where everyone jumps ship the next day. So if you open up, if the world is your hiring arena, you have more opportunities, but you can optimize and have a win-win for the company, for the employee, and the customer.
Absolutely. I think that's just a phenomenal point. And guys, hard to believe, but we've already gone through an hour. I feel like this conversation could go on another couple of hours, but I just wanted to say that we really appreciate all of your participation in this fireside chat. Always, Yoav, Mickey, great insight. John, we really appreciate you joining us for today. I think that hopefully the audience was able to get some ideas, some mindfulness about what we need to focus on, coming out of this pandemic, and how the future of telecom is going to be, reshaped. So again, thank you very much, guys, and I'm looking forward to doing another one of these. I think we should make this like a weekly thing. What do you say?
Let's do it bi-weekly. So.
Bi-weekly. All right, there we go. All right, gentlemen, thank you again.
For the opportunity, we appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Take
you
care.
Very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.